my name is Tony Overbay. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and part of the writing team of the best-selling book, He's a Porn Addict, Now What?, along with my co-author, Joshua Shea.
Welcome to our first episode of He's a Porn Addict, Now What?, the podcast. We're basing it on our award-winning book and bestseller, He's a Porn Addict, Now What? My name is Joshua Shea. I am a former pornography addict. I am teamed with Tony Overbay, a licensed marriage family therapist. We're going to get right into this. We're going to take on the first question in the book, and Tony will give his answer. I'll give my answer. Then we'll have a short discussion. Our first question in the book was, how do I know if he's actually an addict? Tony.
Okay. And what a great way to start, because this is a question I know I get in my practice on a regular basis. So here's what I said. Okay, how do I know if he's actually an addict? As the mental health professional, so I said, when a client comes into my office to talk about her partner who she thinks is an addict, she'll usually begin to list all the reasons she's sure he's addicted to pornography. Then she will ask me the question, how do I really know? And at this point, I recognize that she's doubting herself and she's questioning her intuition. This usually happens for one of two reasons. Number one, either she thinks she's not qualified to make that diagnosis, or most commonly, she doesn't want it to be true. And I will hear the client's entire monologue about her partner's behavior, a behavior that led her to my office in the first place, only to hear her say, but I'm probably wrong. But what she's really thinking is, please tell me I'm wrong. Chances are she's not wrong, but there is help and there is hope. There are countless definitions of addiction, each with its own little nuances. But for the work I do, I like the definition proposed by the American Society of Addiction Medicine, ASAM.org. And it states that addiction is characterized by inability to consistently abstain, impairment in behavioral control, a craving, a diminished recognition of significant problems with one's behavior and interpersonal relationships, and a dysfunctional emotional response. Like other chronic diseases, addiction often involves cycles of relapse and remission. Without treatment or engagement in recovery activities, addiction is progressive and it can result in disability or premature death. So that is the quote. But to me, the exact defining of the word addiction is largely a matter of semantics. If it's affecting your relationship negatively and you suspect it's an issue that needs to be dealt with, the labeling of addiction or not addiction becomes irrelevant. If it's negatively affecting your marriage, relationship, or family, it needs to be treated, whatever you want to call it. I have couples come into my office and one is adamant that I labeled the other an addict, while the addict may be adamant that he or she not be labeled. We can spend the entire session worrying about labels and trying to define addiction, but that's just wasting crucial time that could be spent on repairing the relationship and overcoming the negative behaviors that brought them here to begin with. This need to label or not label comes up in other areas of my practice as well. In my dealing with clients who may or may not be on the autism spectrum, for example, some come into my office and talk about not being good with social cues, having blind spots and the like. Finding out that they are on the autism spectrum or being labeled autistic is a relief to them, because it's finally an answer to explain their behavior. Others walk through the door and clearly exhibit signs of autistic behavior, yet repeatedly express that they do not want to be tested or evaluated for fear of being labeled because they are afraid people will treat them differently. So the labeling issue is a universal concern. The label doesn't change who they or you are. It doesn't change the behaviors exhibited, and it doesn't change what needs to happen next on the path to dealing with the behavior. If your behavior is causing problems in your relationships, whether or not you are clinically identified or labeled as an addict, then you need to seek professional help. So Josh, what was your take? What was your answer?
Well, the easy answer is that you don't. You've seen the behavior and that should be enough. It does not matter what the label is. I've been labeled all kinds of things in my life. Porn addict, bipolar disorder sufferer, alcoholic, PTSD character, narcissistic, depressed, detached, non-empathetic. And at some point, they all just started blending together because there are no blood tests for any of them. They are just labels used for diagnostics. Look at your partner. Let's say he's not an addict. He's still the same person he was 5 seconds ago. Now let's say he is an addict. He's the same guy. There are typical symptoms you get in all addiction. I'm guessing you're witnessing them in person, but my bigger question to you becomes, what now changes? I had been told that I was an alcoholic for years by many people, and I knew that I was not far from whatever my abstract idea of someone who deals with alcoholism was at the time. I just didn't think I was that far along. I had no idea pornography addiction was a real thing until after I entered recovery. Was I an alcoholic despite the fact I denied it? Yes. Was I a porn addict despite the fact I didn't know it? Yes. Things only changed when I made the decision that it was time for them to change. Yes, there were many factors at work, and I'm sure there is in your life, and I was certainly coerced and shoved into recovery. Looking back, though, I can only thank the people who gave me little choice but to seek help. You may have a man that wants help, recognizes he needs to change, and embraces recovery with both arms. You may also have someone in denial who is either putting up a front in the face of the facts or who genuinely believes nothing is wrong with them. Does it matter if this person is a quote unquote addict, according to whatever medical text is in front of you? For the professionals who have legal, ethical, and diagnostic criteria to follow, it does. But for you, it really shouldn't. You know what you're dealing with, regardless of what the insurance company wants to call it. If the word addict scares you, call it a bad habit, or a compulsion, or a negative hobby. It really doesn't matter. The biggest question is what you're going to do about it.
Josh, okay, what I so love about this first question and the answers that we just provided is, again, we had no idea what each other was going to say. And I think at that point, I had you on my Virtual Couch podcast promoting a book. We felt we had a nice connection. You had reached out and suggested that we write this book together. And other than that, I just love the fact that we really had no idea what the other person was going to say. So I think you can get a vibe there from the answers to that first question, that it's whatever you need to call it to get help. And we're not trying to diminish the concept of addiction, but I love what you just said there of if it wants to be a negative habit, and for me, I'm saying if you want to be an addict, or not want to be an addict, but if you say it helps me to call myself an addict, then that is awesome. And if you say I don't want to be an addict, then okay, but it's time to get help.
These are all just words. And that's what,
Yeah.
I don't speak German. I don't speak Chinese. I don't speak Swahili. I'm sure they have words for addict in all of those languages. And I don't know what they are because, again, they're just words. But I bet that you and I could sit with somebody who would have this kind of diagnosis and recognize the behaviors. Because really, all we're doing with language is codifying a behavior. All we're doing is labeling the behavior. I was diagnosed bipolar disorder at about 24, 25 years old. It's not like a switch flipped when I finally got the diagnosis. It was just, here's what it is. Here's how we're going to treat it. And now I do a lot of coaching of porn addicts. I tell them, if they're like, I don't think I'm an addict. And I was like, okay, fine. What do you want to call it? Well, I can call you your name. I can call you addict. I can call you a pretty princess. It doesn't matter because we're here to talk about the behavior, not the words behind the behavior.
No, that's absolutely right. I have a quote that I want to read. I had a gentleman on my podcast, and I just thought this was so good. And of course, that would have helped if I would have had it queued up here, but I am stalling. I'm tap dancing here, Josh. Here it is. Here it is. Are you ready? This better be good, right? Okay. Now this better deliver. I had a gentleman named Sam Telemans on my podcast, and he also works with people that are struggling to overcome pornography addiction and recover from control disorder, compulsive behaviors. But he shared this with me. He said, the strongest force in the human personality is to act in alignment with how you see yourself. So however you identify yourself, you're going to find a way back to your home base. So where I went with that in the episode was, so if somebody considers themselves an addict, then let's say that they put together months or years, weeks, days, hours of sobriety, whatever that looks like, and they start getting some momentum. But then if you view yourself, but I'm an addict, then it's almost this concept of, so yeah, I made a little bit of groundwork, but I'm an addict. I'm going to eventually find my way back to how I see myself. So if I see myself as a pretty princess or a darn good guy, then I'm going to find my way back to that home base. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Tell me if that resonates.
No, I think that's absolutely true. And I think that you have to figure out who are you going to be next. One of the things that struck me that I never thought about, because when I got into recovery, when I got into that first rehab, I was shocked how many people were scared to death to let go of the addict label. Like they didn't know who they would be. If they were not the addict, they didn't know who they would be. Because the porn or the alcohol or the drugs or whatever it was somebody was there for, that was their personality. That was how they defined themselves. That was their self-image. So letting go of this person who is the addict, well, do I have to let go of all my friends?
Yeah.
What the heck do I do otherwise? That sounds boring. All of these things, it's almost scary for someone who's been in an addictive state for so long to just let it go and to just see what's on the other side. And I find now that I do a lot of speaking, that I write the books and whatnot, I have to, drive home the point. Life is so much better on the other side of addiction.
Okay. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, because I like what you're saying about, I work with so many people that don't even realize that's their identity. And I mean, man, if we break it down too, it's that concept of not feeling the feelings at times. If somebody feels bad or depressed or down, or they feel like they're a bad husband or father, they don't like their career, they're struggling with their faith or their health or any of those things, and they don't like the feeling, then, well, how do I get rid of the feeling? I'm going to turn to some coping mechanism like pornography, get a nice dopamine bump. And so I feel like I like what you're saying, of where it breaks my heart for what you're saying, of where then people feel like, but this is what I do. Like, this is who I am. And if I'm not an addict, is that what you're saying? Then I may not be able to get this same rush of feel-good chemicals.
Yeah, I know myself as an addict. I don't know who I am without the substance, without the behavior.
Yeah.
And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this first episode. We're going to keep these short. We're going to do question by question. Hopefully you'll join us for the next one. We're going to go through the entire book over the next few months. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to comment or to seek out Tony or I, and we've got all of our information right there in the notes. Any final thought, Tony?
No, we have a lot of questions to get through, and I already like the energy here. And so we welcome your feedback. Check the show notes and you'll find a way to get a hold of us. And Josh, can't wait till episode 2.
Thank you.